A woman's scream cuts through a quiet Sacramento neighborhood. Police kick open a door, only to freeze. A young woman lies motionless on the floor. Her skin is pale, too pale. Next to her, an empty cup, and a bloody ring around a plate. And standing over her is something they can't explain. A man staring blankly, his hands stained red, moving with no emotion at all. He isn't running. He isn't hiding. He's drinking. But what happened next shocked everyone. Sacramento, California. Winter of 1977. A season where families decorate their homes, but whispers of fear drift through the cold air. The victim is Teresa Wallen, a 22-year-old wife preparing for a new chapter in life. She's cheerful, hopeful, expecting her first child. And the suspect? A disturbed 27-year-old man named Richard Trenton Chase. Someone the neighborhood barely notices, but police will soon fear more than anyone. Before this nightmare began, no one imagined Sacramento would be stalked by a man whose crimes would redefine horror. We post daily. Subscribe so you never miss a case. Before the horror that would shake Sacramento, Teresa Wallen lived a life filled with quiet hope. At 22, she was settling into a small, warm home on Tioga Way with her husband, David. Their lives were simple: morning coffee, shared jokes before work, long talks about the baby on the way. Teresa had a soft, calming presence. Neighbors often described her as the kind of woman who saw the good in everyone. She walked gently, spoke gently, loved gently. She was excited about becoming a mother. She had just arranged the nursery, folding tiny clothes by the window, the winter sun lighting up her face. Every corner of her world radiated the promise of new beginnings. But somewhere across Sacramento, another life was crumbling in the shadows. Richard Trenton Chase drifted through the city like a forgotten ghost. Thin, unsteady, eyes unfocused as if staring through a fog no one else could see. He lived alone in a filthy apartment littered with molding food, dirty clothes, and empty pill bottles. His mental illness had swallowed him whole years earlier, dissolving the boundary between reality and paranoid fantasy. He believed his organs were failing, that his blood was turning to dust, that someone, or something, was trying to poison him. And he believed only one thing could save him: blood from another living being. At first, he hunted animals, cats, dogs, even neighborhood pets. He didn't kill out of hatred, he killed because his delusions told him he had to. Each act quieted the panic in his mind, but only for a moment. Soon the relief faded, the fear returned, and the urge deepened. People around him noticed the signs: the erratic behavior, the vacant stare, the overwhelming smell when he passed by. But every warning slipped through the cracks. Doctors discharged him. Family kept their distance. No one connected the dots in time. As winter settled in, Chase's hallucinations became stronger. His body, he believed, was dying faster. And the only cure was fresh human blood. On the morning of January 23, 1978, Teresa opened her door, believing she was returning to the safety of her home. She never saw the man watching her from the street. She never heard the footsteps approaching. And in that moment, quiet, ordinary, unsuspecting, her fate collided with his madness. Everything her family knew and loved was about to change forever. The afternoon light was thin and pale when Teresa Wallen returned home. She carried a small grocery bag: milk, bread, a few items for dinner. Nothing unusual. She pushed the door open, humming softly to herself, the kind of gentle tune people hum when life still feels safe. She didn't know someone was behind her. She didn't know she'd been watched since the moment she stepped out of her car. Richard Chase moved quickly, silently, mechanically, like a man driven by instinct rather than intent. As Teresa stepped inside, he shoved the door wider and raised his .22 caliber handgun. There was no hesitation, no emotion. The shot echoed through the quiet Sacramento neighborhood, a sharp crack that made a dog 2 houses down bark. Teresa collapsed instantly, groceries spilling across the floor, eggs cracking, milk leaking, a paper bag rolling away. Inside the house, the radio played a soft love song. The curtains fluttered in the winter draft. And in the middle of it all, Chase stood motionless, staring down at her as though examining an object, not a human being. Then he knelt. What followed was not fueled by anger, not by vengeance, but by delusion, dark, unrelenting, and all-consuming. He mutilated her body with chilling precision. He collected her blood. He drank it. Each act performed with the same detached calm as someone completing a routine task. Minutes passed, then more. Time inside that house became something else entirely: slow, distorted, suffocating. When Chase finally left, he didn't run. He simply walked out the back door, leaving behind a scene no one in Sacramento had ever witnessed before. Hours later, Teresa's husband, David, came home. He noticed the door slightly open. He noticed the silence. "Teresa?" No answer. He stepped inside and froze. The groceries, the blood, the stillness, the scream that tore from his throat shook the walls. Neighbors rushed outside. Someone called the police. But nothing could prepare the responding officers for what they found. The brutality, the ritualistic precision, the evidence that this killer wasn't finished. Detectives exchanged uneasy looks. This wasn't rage. This wasn't random. This was someone who would kill again. And somewhere out there, he was already planning his next move. Detectives arriving at the Wallen home knew instantly this was no ordinary homicide. The brutality was unlike anything they had seen, methodical, deliberate, and almost ritualistic. There were footprints, smeared blood patterns, and signs the killer had stayed inside the home far longer than necessary. But no fingerprints, no weapon, no clear motive. Only the haunting sense that whoever did this was not finished. The investigation began with neighborhood canvassing. Officers went door to door, gathering fragments of information that felt insignificant at first. One neighbor mentioned seeing a strange, skinny man wandering around earlier that day. Another recalled a foul smell drifting from the nearby apartments for weeks. Another spoke softly of missing pets, cats disappearing one by one. None of these leads pointed to a killer directly, but together they painted the outline of someone spiraling. Still, detectives needed more. Then, just days after Teresa's murder, another call came in. A woman and her family found dead inside their home. Evelyn Miroth, 38. Her 6-year-old son Jason. Her 22-month-old nephew. Her friend, who had stopped by unexpectedly. The crime scene was even worse than the first. The killer took his time. Left almost nothing unviolated. Blood had been drained, collected, consumed. Items were moved. Windows left open. This was not a man afraid of being caught. This was a man acting on compulsion. Sacramento went into panic mode. Schools tightened security. People locked their doors during daylight. Parents kept children inside. Detectives worked around the clock. And then they got their first break. A witness near the Miroth home reported seeing a disheveled man carry something to a car and drive off fast. She remembered the license plate partially. Investigators pieced together variations in the DMV database. Only one name fit the pattern: Richard Trenton Chase. It wasn't much, but it was enough to dig deeper. As detectives looked into Chase, they unearthed a troubling history: psychiatric hospitalizations, violent delusions, a report from a mother terrified of her son's mental decline, stories of killing animals, complaints from neighbors about disturbing smells and screams, and most alarming of all, records showing Chase had purchased a handgun just months earlier. Detectives realized they weren't hunting a criminal thinker, they were hunting a man drowning in psychosis. But the real breakthrough came when a lab matched bullet casings from both crime scenes to the same .22 caliber weapon. When they traced that gun's purchase record, the name that surfaced confirmed their worst fear: Richard Chase. Surveillance teams moved in. They positioned themselves outside his apartment, waiting, watching. The place looked abandoned: dirty blinds, trash piled high, flies swarming around the windows. Then Chase exited the building. He carried a box, walked straight to his car. Calm, emotionless, almost robotic. Officers moved fast. They tackled him to the ground. He didn't resist. Inside the box they found blood-stained rags, clothing fibers matching the victims, and .22 ammunition, the exact caliber used in both murders. But the final confirmation came when they entered his apartment. What they found inside changed the tone of the investigation forever. When detectives stepped inside Richard Chase's apartment, the air itself felt wrong: thick, rancid, heavy with decay. The blinds were shut tight, trapping a smell that made seasoned investigators cover their faces. What they found inside confirmed their deepest fear. This wasn't just the home of a killer. It was the nest of a man completely lost to madness. The kitchen counters were smeared with dried blood. Cups and bowls were filled with a dark, coagulated substance no one wanted to identify. On the table sat a blender, stained red from top to bottom. Inside it, officers found a foul mixture of organs and blood, a grotesque drink Chase had been consuming. Animal remains were scattered across the floor: bones, fur, and pieces of flesh arranged with no pattern or meaning. In the refrigerator, detectives discovered containers holding what appeared to be human tissue. And on the walls, smeared handprints created patterns that made no sense to the sane mind. It was a place where reality had collapsed. With Chase already in custody, Investigators pressed forward with the interrogation. But he didn't act like other killers. He didn't brag. He didn't deny. He didn't even apologize. He spoke in flat, emotionless sentences. He claimed his blood was turning to dust. He believed someone, possibly forces beyond this world, was poisoning him. He said he had to replace the blood he was losing, or he would die. He believed drinking blood was the only thing keeping him alive. When detectives asked why he chose his victims, his answer chilled everyone in the room. Their doors were unlocked. That was it. No rage. No motive. Just opportunity. The trial became one of the most disturbing cases California had ever seen. Courtrooms filled with reporters, psychologists, and citizens desperate to understand how someone could fall so far through the cracks. Prosecutors argued Chase knew what he was doing. They pointed to steps he took to avoid detection, the weapon he purchased, his ability to drive, to load a gun, to break into homes. Defense attorneys countered that Chase was severely mentally ill, incapable of understanding reality, much less the consequences of his actions. They described years of untreated schizophrenia, delusions ignored by doctors, and a system that failed him long before he failed anyone else. But when the jury heard the full details of the crimes, when they saw the photographs, when they listened to the chilling confessions, their decision became inevitable. Richard Trenton Chase was found guilty of 6 murders and sentenced to death in the gas chamber. But the story did not end with justice. On December 26, 1980, Chase was found dead in his prison cell at San Quentin. He had hoarded medication for weeks and overdosed quietly, silently, alone. Some called it suicide. Others believed he simply stopped fighting his own delusions. For the families of the victims, closure never truly came. They were left with memories, grief, and the unimaginable question: could this have been prevented? And in Sacramento, the name, the Vampire of Sacramento, became a haunting reminder of how fragile safety can be. When a monster hides behind the face of a man no one saw coming. To understand Richard Trenton Chase, psychologists often say you must stop thinking like a criminal and start thinking like someone whose reality had completely collapsed. Chase wasn't driven by revenge, thrill, or domination, the typical motives seen in serial offenders. Instead, his violence grew from a place far darker: untreated psychosis, layered with paranoid delusions, deteriorating cognition, and total social isolation. Experts believe Chase suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, one of the most severe mental disorders. His symptoms weren't mild or occasional, they were consuming. For years, he expressed beliefs that his heart was shrinking, his stomach was rotting, and his blood was turning to powder. In his mind, he was dying slowly and painfully. And every hallucination reinforced one idea: the only way to survive was to ingest blood. This single belief became the center of his existence. A cycle emerged: fear, delusion, compulsion, temporary relief, escalation. Criminologists describe Chase as a disorganized killer, but with ritualistic elements unique to his psychosis. He didn't stalk victims for days or plan elaborate escapes. He acted impulsively, choosing homes at random, entering through unlocked doors because he believed locked ones were a sign he wasn't invited. It's a chilling intersection of delusion and opportunity. What makes Chase particularly tragic from a psychiatric perspective is how many warning signs were missed. He had multiple hospitalizations. He killed animals. He mutilated his own body. He told doctors he needed blood to survive. Yet he was released into society with little supervision and no long-term treatment plan. In the end, Chase represents a catastrophic failure where severe mental illness, lack of intervention, and societal neglect collided with devastating consequences. He wasn't a mastermind. He wasn't calculating. He was a man at war with a reality only he could see, and everyone around him paid the price. In the end, the tragedy of this case is carried not by the name Richard Chase, but by the lives he destroyed. Teresa Wallen, a young woman preparing to become a mother. A family in the Miroth home who never saw the danger coming. People living their ordinary lives, unaware that a system meant to protect them had already failed. Their stories deserve to be remembered not for how they died, but for how they lived, full of hope, full of promise, full of futures stolen far too soon. Chase's death in prison closed the legal chapter of this case. But emotionally, the wound in Sacramento never truly healed. The questions linger. How did this happen? How many signs were missed? Could the nightmare have been stopped before it began? Cases like this remind us that evil doesn't always enter with force. Sometimes it walks quietly. Sometimes, it's ignored until the consequences are irreversible. If this story shook you, you're not alone. These are the crimes the world must never forget. Subscribe and watch our next case. where we reveal another chilling true story hiding in America's dark corners. And tell us in the comments, was Richard Chase responsible for his actions, or was he failed long before he became a killer?